So one thing I've been doing in my free time is soldering. I'm not the best at it, but with all the free time recently, I've been trying to do it more. And one of the things that I really hate about it is the smoke that comes up from the solder itself. And I do wear a mask most of the time, but generally I would like something to take away most of the smoke from me. And you can buy exhaust fans from Amazon or wherever, but they're actually kind of expensive, or at least more than I'd like to spend for just a hobby that I do sometimes. And so I thought I'd make one myself, and that's what you see here. This is an exhaust fan I've created from an old PC fan that you normally put in the case. A gutted Walmart lamp with a pretty nice articulating arm for a Walmart lamp, and a little PWM dimmer. And then let me turn it on here, face it towards the camera. So you can see with the dimmer, you can actually control the speed, like the motherboard in a computer controls the fan. And then I can turn up the knob here. You can see it gets faster. You can probably hear it on the mic too. So yeah, let's see how I made it. So once we have the lamp, we'll need a PC case fan, a PWM dimmer, some wire, mine is 18 gauge, a 12 volt female barrel connector, and a 12 volt power supply. Mine is 0.5 amps at 12 volts, which should be fine because my fan is only 0.16 amps at 12 volts. Once you get the lamp, you'll find an actual LED assembly as well as a step-down converter that changes the 120 volt current to a 94 volt current so that the LED diodes won't burn out. Pretty cool. We can go ahead and cut that out to save it for a later project. Next, we take the rest of the wiring out of the lamp, which should leave us with just the housing. Once that's done, measure out your wiring for your assembly. Yes, you can technically use the existing wiring, but since it has a 120 volt plug at the end, you'll have to deal with converting that voltage, which is a hassle. Plus, my design looks more cohesive this way. Then we can prep the bottom end of the wiring for connection to the barrel plug. Go ahead and strip the wires and solder them to the wires of the barrel plug. Sorry for the ugly solder job. Make sure to use heat shrink to protect your connections. Before wiring the top part of the lamp, we want to look at our PWM dimmer and find the connections. On this one, the output is marked motor and the input is marked DC input. Then we solder the input to the dimmer. I like to coat both sides of what I'm soldering together with a little bit of solder before I connect them to make the process a little smoother. Before we move on to the fan, we want to prep the lamp housing. So that the smoke has a place to go, I drilled a hole on the back of my housing with a step-up bit. There should also be a smaller plastic piece in the housing that allows it to be screwed into. I hot glued that in to secure it. Now, what I forgot to record was cutting the connectors off the fan, but make sure to save those so you have them for future projects too. So we're going to take the wires from the fan and run it through the housing and make sure that the exhaust side of the fan is facing the inside. Then we hot glue the shade to the fan. My fan happened to fit the lamp perfectly, but with whatever fan you use, make sure that you hot glue any gaps along the edges so that there's an airtight seal around the outside. This will help with pressure. Once that's done, we can screw it in. So before you solder the wires, please note this pin out. I thought I could bypass the sensor wire, but my fan failed to start without any voltage running through it. So make sure to solder both the negative and the sensor wire to the negative output connection when connecting the wires to the dimmer. When that's done, plug it in and give it a test. For a finishing touch, I put hot glue over my connections to protect them, and then glued the whole assembly to the lamp itself. I also put electrical tape to cover up the exposed dimmer and make it not stand out as much. After all that, you should have a finished project. Here I'm testing it out. So, no projects without its bumps in the road, but I think it turned out pretty good. The articulation works pretty much just as well as it did when it was a lamp, and it lets me kind of position it anywhere I need it to. I did have to tighten the bearings a little bit to support the extra weight of the fan, but otherwise it holds its spot pretty well. There are a couple things though that I think would definitely benefit from a change. For one, the case fan that I have here, it's pretty good at sucking in air, but as soon as smoke hits the large fan blades, it kind of gets thrown around, and I end up with this kind of cloud of smoke at the front of it. And although it's definitely better than the smoke going directly into the mask, it definitely doesn't take as much of it away as I'd like. Part of that could also be because of my exhaust hole, which is the second issue. I think it definitely needs to be a lot bigger on mine. I just didn't have time to sit down and make it larger, but I definitely want to do that in the future. That way it doesn't build up as much smoke and it doesn't want to come out the front side, and then you end up with just smoke everywhere. The dimmer and the power supply stuff worked out great. I thought there were some issues at first, but once I realized that the sensor cable needs to have voltage going through it to activate the fan, I just went ahead and fixed that and it worked fine from there. But yeah, it's not the prettiest thing, but I think it does its job pretty good. And if you guys can think of anything else that I could change to it, or a completely different design, please let me know in the comments below. If you found this interesting, please feel free to like it, and if you want to see more, please subscribe. Thanks. It kind of looks like the lamp from Pixar got turned into a cyborg.